Today, we are going to be looking at strategy analysis. Strategy analysis. Having to prepare a strategy, right, for a business. So many things could require a business to create strategies or to adopt strategies or to request for strategy. Part of that could be maybe they want to increase their profitability. So you need the best strategy to increase profitability. It could be that they want to reduce operating costs. It could be that they want to increase their market share. It could be that they want to change entirely their business process, their ways of doing work, right? So many things or so many factors could influence a change, or so many need could influence a change, right? And for all of this change that occurs, before the change goes into implementation, at least some level of strategy analysis work must have been done in the background, either by the BA or someone in top management who has an eye for strategy. Okay, so today we are going to understand, as a BA, if I want to perform strategy analysis, what will I do? What does it involve? And how do I go about it? Okay, so let's start with understanding what strategy analysis is. Strategy analysis basically focuses on understanding why a change, right? Remember, change is transformation in response to a need. Why a change is required, and defining the activities that the organization will have to undertake in order to implement that change successfully. So in strategy analysis, we are trying to know the actual reason why we need to make this change, why we need to increase profitability, why we need to reduce operating costs, why we need to change our way of work or our business processes, why we need to probably increase our market share, why we need to get into a new market. So we try to understand why that change is needed. And then we go ahead to define the set of activities that the business or the company or the organization or the enterprise would need to undertake for that change to be materialized, or for that change to successfully occur. Using strategy analysis as a PA, you have to do you have to be involved in a lot of collaboration with your stakeholders. So you engage them, you bounce off ideas on them, you pick their brains, you work with them, you get their feedback, you get their input. You need to engage stakeholders a lot by identifying strategic and vital needs for the business, and as well provide the organization with the means to satisfy those needs. The strategic analysis approach depends on the nature of the change, the nature of what change is being implemented, right? If the change is precisely defined and the outcome is pretty well predictable, then the BA will most likely have a plan for a clear strategy ahead, right? But if the change is unclear and stakeholders don't really know what the outcome could be, then we'll have to focus on how to mitigate the risk, testing our hypothesis, and experimenting the approach to which we can reach a possible best results. Now, what are the elements of strategy analysis? When we want to do strategy analysis, what are the elements or components, or what are the things or activities we do when performing strategy analysis. I'm not even putting this on slideshow. So analyzing so the element of strategy analysis is 1, analyzing current states, 2, defining the future states, 3, assessing the risks involved, and 4, defining the change strategy. What should be the best strategy for the change? Defining that change strategy. So first, you look at the current state. That's because before you help somebody in our secular world, or should I say in our literal world, if I come to Tunji for help today, maybe I just come to Tunji and I say, Tunji, please, I need you to help me. Tunji will first of all want to understand what the help is and what my current situation is that make it possible for me not to be able to help myself, right? So you need to analyze the current states. Analyze the current states. After understanding what currently exists or the current situation of things in the organization, the next thing for you will be to define the future. How would the future look like in light of this change? So if the company wants to transform their business processes or their way of doing business, you need to know what is the current way that they do their business. Once you know the current way they do business, then you have to define the future way they need to be doing their business. You define it. After that, you now assess potential risk that they might encounter in transitioning to the future, and also the potential risks they might encounter when they arrive in the future. So the risks when transitioning and the risks when they are in the future. You assess those risks and then you define the best way for that change to be implemented, the best strategy for that change. So we'll take a look at each and every one of them, one after the other, starting with analyzing the current state, understanding what the current situation is. So in explaining today's class, I'll basically use something that happened, something that I did in 2019 in my former place of work back then. So I was able to, at that point in time, the company I was working with, we were more of a project-based organization. Project-based. And by project-based, I mean everything we do for our clients is to deliver a project and hand it off to that client. Let me give an example with this e-voting solution. So assuming our client then was IIBA, and IIBA needs us to build an e-voting solution for them. We build the e-voting solution and once we finish and they are satisfied with what we have built, we hand over the solution or the application to IIBA and they become sole proprietary owners of it. We can do maintenance cycle for them or yearly maintenance for them and all of that, but the solution becomes that of IIBA. So we are more of project-based, executing projects for clients, give them the work, we hands off, and we just do maintenance. But it got to a time in that 2019, the management saw that being a project-based organization might not be sustainable, right? They needed to become a product-based organization. By product-based organization simply means that instead of doing that e-voting solution as a project and hand it over to IIBA, it means that the organization will now build their own e-voting solution, an elaborate, exhaustive, comprehensive e-voting solution with so many features, right? And then if IIBA comes to them and say, we need e-voting solution, they'll tell IIBA that we have an e-voting solution. All you have to do is to subscribe or commit to commercials, and then we'll give you access to our e-voting solution. You make use of it. Once IIBA finish using it, that is it. The solution is still ours. IIBA no longer have access to that e-voting. So whoever wants to use the solution, we make use of it, we'll pay, we grant them access to whatever features they need, we set it up for them, and then they use it, and that is all. So that was the approach that the business wanted to go into at that point. And we needed to do strategy analysis to find out how best to actually implement this change within the business. So what we first did was to look at the current state, to analyze the current state. And in analyzing current states, what you do is to understand the reason why the organization needs to change some aspects of how it operates, and what would directly or indirectly be affected by that change. So we need to understand, why does the business need to change, right? And which aspects of the organization, right? Which aspect of the organization will be directly or indirectly affected by this particular change. When analyzing current state, we need to consider some key components, right? We need to look at some key things in the organization and its strategy that would help us understand every relevant areas for change or improvement within the business. Number one is to understand the business need. And that's because as a BA, whichever initiative you are doing or you are working on, whether it is strategic, such as strategy analysis or business cases or business modeling, or tactical, maybe you are building a solution, or operational, or you're optimizing an existing business process, whichever initiative you are involved in as a BA, we need to make sure that we drive that initiative from the point of the need by understanding what the need is. So what is the need of the business, right? So the business need could either be a problem or it could be an opportunity. For that particular project that we were doing then, the business need was of two sides. One, they saw it as a way for them to be up to date with trending business processes. So they don't want to phase out, and then it gets to a point that their customers are no longer requiring their one-off projects, right? And you see it as a way as well. Part of the need is that they see it as a way to become much more profitable, much more efficient as a business. So profitable in the sense that, so if IIBA comes to us and we build an e-voting solution to them and give them that e-voting solution, it means that IIBA will never come to us again to build e-voting solution for them. So it means that source of revenue is closed. But if you build a product and IIBA needs e-voting solution for their election, they can come to us, we set it up for them, collect a fee, and then after setting it up, they use it. Once they are done, next year, if they want to do election, they'll still come back to us. We set it up, collect a fee. So we are going to have a form of recurring revenue, yearly recurring revenue, which helps the business stay profitable, right? And also, it helps the business become more efficient. Instead of repeatedly building solutions, the same solution for different clients, right? We can build one solution and all clients will plug into it and make use of it. So profitability, efficiency was some of the business reasons or strategic reasons for which the company needed to change its way of doing business at that point. The next thing we also needed to look at was the organizational culture and the organizational structure of the business. So we needed to x-ray the current reporting lines, the current roles and staff that are within the organization, if they will be able to support the future state. Before we actually transited into that product-based organization, we never had anyone with the title of product manager within the team, right? Or DevOps manager. All we had was just system database administrator who manages our database and all of that. So there was no product manager. All we had was just business analysts and software engineers. We don't even have product designer then. It was I, the business analyst, that was doing most of the designs, the initial designs for our systems, right? So it means that our organizational structure needs to be impacted. It needs to be changed. It needs to be affected. So we needed to know that we needed to look at what roles do we currently have in our organizational structure, then how is the reporting line structured as well. Then look at the organizational culture in terms of what are the norms within the organization. Everybody knows that we are a project-based organization, so we need to do some is it ideology sensitization or whatever, I forgot the name now, to sensitize everyone that we are going to become a product-based organization. So we need to understand the current organizational culture and the current structure of the business, and then the current capabilities and processes of the business. So what are the current activities that the organization does in delivering a project, right? Or in engaging a client for a solution request. We also needed to look at our processes in delivering a solution, our solution delivery process, our project delivery processes, all of those things. We needed to consider them by looking at the capabilities of the business and also the processes. Capabilities in terms of the staff strength, capabilities in terms of the activities that the organization undertake in relationship with the clients, relationship with internal stakeholders as well. And then we consider the technological and infrastructural component. So when you are doing a strategy analysis work and you're trying to understand the current state, you need to know what is the current technological and infrastructural standing. By technological, we are looking at the current technological stack, the technology solutions that the company has, what stack or what languages or what programming framework are they running on, right? We also needed to look at the state of that technological stack. Is it what is trending or is it outdated? All of those things we needed to consider it. Then in terms of infrastructure, what infrastructural facilities do we have, right? In terms of our infrastructure, are they on cloud or are they on premise? If they're on premise, what number of infrastructures like databases and servers do we have running on our premises and what's not, right? And then we looked at the policies, the current policies, like our SLA, service level agreements. What are the current SLAs that we have? Our contracts, what are the current ways we structure our contracts and what have you? So we look at the policies of the business. Another situation might be looking at the HR policies, right? Might be looking at the privacy policies of the business. So we look at the policies that currently exist in respect to the change that we want to implement. And then after that, you take a look, we also look at the business architecture. So by business architecture, what I'm referring to here is basically how all the elements of the business, driving from the organizational structure to capabilities and processes to policies, how all elements of the business fit together to operate and function successfully. So we need to consider the architectural structure or the business architecture in line with the change we are making. And then we looked at the internal assets. When you are trying to understand the current situation, you need to know what are the current assets internally, what are the current assets of the business internally. And these assets could be tangible, maybe in For instance, maybe monetary assets or land or physical equipment or pool cars or whatever. So monetary assets, maybe they have a land or they have office building that belongs to them. Could be that they have license, unlimited license with AWS or whatever. So what are the tangible assets or resources rather? And then you also look at the intangible resources. An example will be the brand, right? Or intellectual properties of the business. These are examples of intangible assets. So what are the current tangible and intangible resources that the business have at the moment? And then we consider the external influencers. Example of external influencers is what is the structure of the industry in terms of what are the things trending within the industry at the moment, right? We look at the competitors. Who are the major competitors in the industry today? Who are the key customers or clients within the industry? And finally, we consider the macroeconomic factors. Example, inflation, unemployment rate, all of these things, we put them into consideration for the current situation, on the current state, in the present. We try to understand all of these things, how they affect or how they will affect the change and how they currently exist. By the time we are done analyzing all of these components in our current state, we will then need to go ahead where necessary. If it is a business process that we are trying to create a strategy for, we will need to map out a current state business process. Do you understand? We will need to map out a current business process so that everybody will know that this is the current process in our strategy that we use in driving this change. And by the time everyone is aligned with it, the next thing we are now going to do will be to now define the future states. So how would the future state of the business look like? What are going to be the things that we'll be doing in the future for us to change our way of doing business or our way of work? But before I go into that, I don't know if anyone have any question regarding analyzing the current states.
No question from me, sir.
Okay, thank you, Ikechukwu. Any other person?
For me, in analyzing the current state, if there's a situation that you needed to, maybe there's a change and it will affect changing the process and procedures, and the team in charge, maybe there's a restructure and the new team does not have sufficient knowledge about the process, how to make it better for the future. And as a business analyst, I don't have understanding as well as regards the way it's meant to be in terms of understanding the current state. What will I be able to do in that instance as a business analyst?
Okay, so what I'll say is in this strategy analysis, understanding the current state is the simplest part of it. It's the simplest task you will do within strategy analysis. What do I mean? Assuming you are part of an organization and if you want to do strategy analysis, and you need to understand the current state. There are people within the organization that knows what currently exists. Moreover, whoever is requesting for the change knows what currently exists for them to desire a change to occur. Are you following me? The only place that you might have challenges at the BA or the organization might have challenges might be in defining the future states, how the future will look like. That's where you need some experience or expertise in wading through. But understanding the current state, every business knows their current situation. All you need as a BA in this, during the points of understanding the current state or during the analyzing current states stage of the work, all you need as the BA is to ask questions. ask the right questions. Do you understand? So you are eliciting at that point. You are engaging stakeholders, asking them. So for instance, technology and infrastructure. We have the IT team or IT units. You engage probably the CTO or the head of that department and ask that person questions. What is our current technological situation? How do we embrace technology? What is our technological mantra? You know, you ask them questions, open-ended. Let them give you as much information as possible. If it's about policies, you can engage the legal team, right? The legal team or the HR team or the compliance team, if you have such within your organization. Ask them questions about current policies of the business, right? If it is about current capabilities and processes, you can go to the different department heads to know what their current processes are in line with that change. Are you following me now? In line with that change. Okay. In terms of the business need, the CEO who desires that change will be the one to tell you what the business need is from his own point, why he wants that change to happen. Right? If it's as a result of a problem that he has identified or an opportunity he feels that the company can leverage. So on the areas that you might now need to do a bit of your research will be in the external influencers. Maybe you can do a bit of research, even things like competitors. The owner of the business will also know his major competitor in the market. You agree with me that if you're in the market today, you basically know who your major competitors are, right? So if you don't want to approach him or her for that particular information, you can do a research. Things are open on the web, right? You can do your research and see major competitors, things like inflation, employment rate. You can see all of those things on the web. So analyzing the current state is the easier work, right, for every BA to do, because all you have to do is get to know what currently exists by asking the right questions from the right people. So you're not going to be working with junior team members that don't know anything about the business. If it is a strategy for the business, and let me also say this, strategy analysis mostly is done at the management level. Do you understand? At the top tier level. It is by the time that they finished with the strategy analysis and they have aligned on how the future, on how the strategy change will be, management will now communicate down to every other staff member. Say, this is the approach, this is our strategy, this is our vision for the year 2024. These are the things we want to achieve. But they have done enough strategy work to be able to validate that those vision or mission or strategy would be possible and it would be profitable. Does that help to clarify?
Yes, it does. But in the situation that you need to understand the capabilities and processes, and the manager does not have enough knowledge about the current state, you still need to meet with the junior ones in that instance.
If necessary.
Okay.
That is the thing. If necessary. The beauty of analyzing current state is that you don't need to rack your brain trying to see how to flesh out the current situation. You have people that are doing those things currently. So let them tell you the way they currently do things or the way things are currently. Do you understand? The same thing happens if the work is being put out to consulting firms, maybe BCG or McKinsey. When BCG or McKinsey comes, they'll still need to interview those people or elicit requirements from them to understand the current state. Do you understand? So all these consulting firms like PwC or Deloitte or EY or KPMG or BCG or McKinsey, all of them, when they want to consult, they'll still need to understand your current situation, what currently exists, what is the current state. And they don't understand that current state by assuming, they understand it by asking. Do you understand? So it's based on the information they provide you that you are going to work with.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
You're welcome. Any other question?
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Genesis. I have a question.
Yeah, Innocent, go ahead.
Okay, my question is looking at the current state in a project. At what stage do you do the strategy analysis? Because from what I gathered in the course of today's class, you talked about some of your findings in the current state will be what will define the type of requirement you are going to elicit from the stakeholders. So I was now wondering in my head, at what stage we do the strategy analysis? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. So strategy analysis is an initiative of its own. So it's a project of its own. But most times it's always, it's not a delivery project like, where we have to now implement. Do you understand? It is a project. I used to put it as project before the project. Let me give an example now. When we talked about the situation, was the instance I was giving whereby we are moving from a project-based to a product-based organization, right? Now we need to prepare a strategy analysis on how to strategically change our way of doing business. By the time we completed that strategy analysis work, then we need to now start implementing the change. Do you understand now? We need to now start implementing the change. So strategy analysis does not implement change. Strategy analysis defines how the change, what the current situation is, what the future would look like, and how that change should occur.
Okay.
Are you following me now?
Very well.
Yeah. So we in businesses, we have, or in business analysis, we have some projects that it doesn't require implementation. It's not a delivery type of project. It is a strategic initiative. That's what I told you guys, that in the first class we had, I said that 3 different sectors in business analysis, or 2 different initiatives or projects we do. There's strategic initiative. Example is the strategy analysis. Do you understand? There is tactical initiative or tactical projects, like when you're actually delivering a solution, like building a solution or you're optimizing a business process. Then building a solution, right? Then there is operational analysis, when you are optimizing a business process, an existing business process. Tactical analysis requires the implementation of a solution. A solution component must be implemented. When we talk about tactical analysis, it must result to the development or implementation of a solution, right? That will solve a need, right? In strategic analysis, it results in coming up with ways or approaches to solve a need. Do you understand? Or saying how, or coming up with recommendations on how a need should be solved. That is tactical analysis. Strategic analysis. But in operational analysis, it results in enhancing and improving of a process or of a business operation. Are you following me now? So this strategy analysis work that we did in 2019, and again, if you remember when I told you guys that most times these business analysis initiatives don't go in isolation. Sometimes you can do strategic and tactical. Do you understand? Together. So that means after I finish strategic, you need a tactical initiative to complement the strategic initiative. Sometimes it could be strategic and operational. Sometimes it could be operational and tactical. Sometimes it could be tactical, just like that. So the one we did about changing the way we do our business, it involves both strategic analysis or strategic initiative rather, and operational initiative. We did not develop any solution. We did not implement any solution. All that was done was for us to be able to understand what needs to be changed, right? And then we change it within our business architecture, within our business layer, without implementing a solution. Are you following me now?
Very well. I think
Alright.
it's clear to me now. I think majorly, if I understand everything you have said, is that it's just like in our bank, we do what we call business summit at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And part of the recommendations of that business summit, if it's the one that we warrant maybe setting up a project implementation team, they will go ahead. The IT guys will go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
But if it's the one that is just about improving the way we do things, maybe talk to our direct report on the need for us to improve our services based on that recommendation. So usually it means that this strategy analysis is what gives birth to either tactical or what you call, let me use your word,
Operational.
Operational. So
Yeah.
it depends on the
Most
recommendation.
times. Yes.
It depends on the recommendation of the strategy analysis.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
That is why virtually every year companies have yearly strategy. They will say, let us do as like most companies do their own ending of the year. They will do the strategy they will try to derive the strategy for the next year. Do you understand? And sometimes from that strategy, they may come up with yearly targets. Do you understand? So that is strategic analysis. Strategic initiatives. That's an example of strategic initiative, which is strategy analysis. Another example of strategic initiative is preparing business cases, like we learned, right? Another example is business modeling. Most times the output most times results in recommendations on how to change. Do you understand? It results to recommendations, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you for those questions, guys. So let's go ahead to defining the future state. By the time we've been able to understand what currently exists, we now need to go ahead to look for areas or aspects within the business that would need to be optimized in order to make up the future state of the business that we are considering. So in future state definition, we must ensure that the future state of the organization is well defined. Just for instance, imagine if you go to hospital to see a doctor. The doctor wants to understand your current situation, right? So how are you feeling? Which they call diagnosis. How are you feeling? You say you're having headache. How is the headache? Or you say you're having tummy ache. How is it doing you? How is your tummy doing you? Is it rumbling or pinning you or pressing you or aching you? You know, they're trying to understand your current situation, right? And when they finish understanding or analyzing your current situation, part of the analysis of current situation is that if the doctor is not so sure of what your current situation is, he will recommend you for a test. You might go for a lab test or a scan or blood test or whatever one it is. By the time you get all the evidence of your current state, right? He will now tell you what the problem is. Oh, the problem is that you have typhoid. The problem is that you have migraine headache. The problem is that you have this or that, right? And he will now tell you, okay, this is what you're going to do. And in the future, he clearly defines the future state for you. In the future, if such thing happens, do this. Or in the future, going forward, for instance, if it is someone that is asthmatic, that they discover a person is asthmatic, they'll tell, okay, in the future, you are going to be making use of this medication for your situation, which is the future state. He needs to clearly define that future for you. Because if the future is not clear for you, you might get into problem. You might put yourself in a devastating medical situation, right? So as BAs, when we have finished analyzing the current states, we also need to go ahead. We also need to go ahead and define the future states of the business. Now, in defining the future states, we also need to look at certain components. We look at the majority of the major components and the sub-components that we need to look at when we are defining the future state. Number one is the business need and objectives. Remember that we have been able to identify what the need of the business is, right? When we are doing the current state analysis. But when we are trying to define the future state, we also need to define the business objectives for the future, for that future change. So if the future change for us is that you are going to increase profits year on year by 20%, right? Or we are going to reduce operating costs by 30% year on year. All of those things, we need to be able to define or clearly state the objectives that we need to pursue in the future. That was why I added when I was answering Innocent's question that sometimes things like yearly targets result from strategy analysis work that the business does when they are trying to do their business strategy, right? And that's because they're trying to set objectives for the future, right? So you need to define the objectives, the business objectives, along with the need. Secondly, you need to be able to understand or clearly explain the scope of the solution that we need in the future, right? So you are going from a project to product base, right? That product base is going to be our future. Now, that future situation, what are the things it's going to help us to solve? What solution will it bring to the business? Do you understand? Remember that we started the change from the point of the need, which could either be a problem or an opportunity. So the future state needs to be a solution to the current state. And what is the scope of that particular solution? And then what are the constraints, or should I say dependencies or obstacles that we might experience when we are trying to when we arrive in the future? So when we get to the future states, what constraints, what obstacles, what challenges or hindrances or hurdles are we going to encounter in the future? Could we be restrictions as a result of budget or time or technology or infrastructural constraints or policy constraints or limitation in resources that could be a constraint for us in the future states? We need to be able to itemize all of that. Then we also define how the organizational structure or the organizational culture should look like in the future. For us, it means that we are going to have new reporting lines and we're going to have new roles within the business. Before then, the name of the title of our department was Business Analysis Department, BAD. Sorry, I think Business and Processes, yes, Business and Processes Department, BPD, right? But when in the future, we needed to change the name of our department to Business and Products Department. So no more processes, Business and Products Department, because you're not going to have product managers as part of the department. So the reporting lines, the organizational structure, the culture in terms of the norm, the ideologies within the organization, what will it be for the future? You should be able to clearly outline that. And then what potential value will the business derive from the future? What value are we going to derive? Is it that our customers will get to understand that we are in touch with trending things or trending situations in the industry or industrial trends, right? Part of the potential value, as I mentioned earlier on, could be that we will be able to have recurring revenue from our clients. Instead of a one-off revenue, we are going to have recurring revenue from them. It means they'll keep on coming to us to use our products and services as long as we are meeting up with their need. And then we consider other components. So those ones are the major components. The other components now consider are things like what will be the future capabilities and processes of the business? What new technological components and infrastructural components do we need to have? How would the new business architecture look like? And what internal assets and policies do we need to have for us to be able to meet up, or for us to be able to have a desirable future state? So that is it for defining future states of the business. Sometimes it is based on so many things can drive how you achieve what the future state will look like. Just as you do in your current state, you also work with stakeholders, right? So for instance, as the BA, you can do projections to know what the potential value will look like. But sometimes, if you know you're not so good in financial analysis or financial projections, you can liaise with the finance team, right? So there's always a finance department in every organization. People can look at, currently, this is the way we do things in terms of projects. Maybe we bill our clients maybe £100,000 for delivering a project for them. I want to deliver that project, it is one-off, right? Maybe that is what we bill our clients for one-off projects, right? You can say, okay, instead of billing them £100,000, probably since you are going to be doing product-based, you can start billing them like £40,000 for the product usage, to use that product within that particular time frame, or to subscribe to our product, maybe £40,000 for subscription. It means that we're going to have recurring revenue of £40,000 every year, right? Rather than just doing one-off and we no longer get money from that customers, we can charge low or have it as a recurring revenue. We can say, okay, let's do £60,000 every year or £50,000 every year, depending. So you can work with the finance team to come up with a financial model or financial projection for the potential value, if the potential value is going to be monetary, right? If the potential value will be in monetary terms, you can work with the finance team to assist with that. If the potential value is not going to be monetary and is going to be from a point of business process, maybe improve business process, you can work with the various head of business units or business teams to understand what potential value does this future state. If, okay, since we are doing this way, if you start doing this, what will be the potential value that you think your department or your current business process or units would enjoy or derive from this? So throughout this time of your strategy analysis work, you don't work in isolation. You are working collaboratively with your stakeholders. I don't know if you have any question before we go into risk assessment briefly. Do we have any question? All right, let's go over to risk assessment and understand what it entails. So for risk assessment, what we are basically doing is to evaluate the risks or trying to understand the undesirable consequences of internal and external forces on the organization during the point of transition, and also when we have arrived in the future states. So what risks are we going to have when we are trying to transit? That's when we are making the change. And what risks are we also going to encounter when we have finally made the change? You need to be able to understand that, and then we make a recommendation we make a recommendation for a course of action. The course of action could be that maybe the business should take on the risk and pursue that change, or the business should still take a step back and consider other options for the change, or the business should not undertake or pursue the change at all. So we need to be able to understand, we need to be able to make a recommendation for the course of action. Mind you, for every recommendation you make, you should be able to back it up with solid reasons for that, because stakeholders want to know, why do you want us to pursue this? Even though the risk is glaring to us, why do you want us to pursue this? Or why don't you want us to pursue this? Or why do you want us to consider other options or alternatives, right? So in risk assessment, we need to be able to understand what are the unknowns and what are the likelihood of those unknowns occurring. What are the constraints and dependencies that we might possibly have in transitioning to the future state, and also when we get to the future state? What negative impacts could this transition or could the change have to us as a business? So what is the negative impact to value? You also need to understand the current risk tolerance of the business or the current risk tolerance of stakeholders. And as I said, finally, you make a recommendation on the course of action. If we should pursue irrespective of the risks, or we should look at alternatives, or we should not pursue, right? Based on your recommendations, stakeholders will make a decision. So it is not our responsibility as the BA to make the decision for the business or to make the decision for stakeholder. However, it is our responsibility to make recommendations to them on a course of action. Is that clear? That takes us to the final section of today's class, which is defining the change strategy. I know some of you guys might have questions regarding the risk assessment, so let's have it. What questions do you have regarding assessing the risk? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay.
No question for me regarding risk assessment.
Okay. So let me ask you guys this question. I know it's been a long time I ask question in class, right? So, Ikechukwu, if
Sir.
you realize that your stakeholders are risk-seeking, you realize that they are risk-seeking, should that make you to recommend them as a course of action to pursue a business, to pursue the change, even though the level of risk is high and the benefits, or even though the risk outweighs the benefits? If you realize that your stakeholders are risk seeking, that means they don't care about the risk. Would you want to, does that give you the opportunity as a BA to recommend that they should pursue the change, even when the risk outweighs the benefits?
I don't think that's the duty of the business analyst to do that.
No, it is your duty to recommend.
Okay.
So I want to know, does that give you the opportunity to recommend? Now, you know that they are risk seeking in the sense that whether there is a huge risk or not, they don't care, right? Does that give you the confidence to recommend that they should pursue a change even when the risk outweighs the benefits?
Yes, since you're recommending, I think you can recommend to them and let them know the
why.
So that you let them know the risks that are involved, and they should take appropriate consideration of the risks that they're facing before they make that decision.
But you're recommending to them to pursue, to make a decision to pursue, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you believe that them being risk seeking gives you the platform to recommend them to pursue a change, even when the risk outweighs the benefits.
That's a tricky one.
Okay, just ponder on it.
Yes.
Oba, how are you? So in a situation whereby your stakeholders are risk neutral, in the sense that they are not risk averse, neither are they risk seeking, they're just risk neutral. If you realize that the risk outweighs the benefits, right? What kind of recommendation would you want to make for your stakeholders when you realize that they are risk, you know that they are risk neutral, and you've been able to discover that the risk outweighs the benefits? What kind of recommendation would you possibly make to your stakeholders? Ponder on that. Then, Tunji, in a situation whereby your stakeholders are risk averse, like they are not ready to take risks at all, they are risk averse, what kind of recommendation will you make to them when you discover that the benefit outweighs the risk? They are risk averse. What kind of recommendations would you make to them when you discover that the benefit outweighs the risk? Right? Ponder on that, Tunji. Then for Innocent, which scenario should I give Innocent now to ponder on? So Innocent, you realize that your stakeholders are risk averse. What kind of recommendation would you make when you realize that when you discover that the benefits and the risks are equal to each other? So equal level of benefits will result to equal level of risk, but they are risk averse. What kind of recommendation would you possibly make to them? So have you guys pondered on it, and anyone want to start with their own possible recommendation? So state your own scenario and then the recommendation you make.
Okay. Let me start by also let me state my own scenario. My scenario is that the stakeholders or the people I'm working with, they are risk averse, which means they don't like to take risk.
Yeah.
But the outcome is going to be either of equal the impact of not taking the risk.
Yeah.
The benefit and of not taking the risk and taking the risk is almost the same.
Yeah.
Now, as a BA, all we do is to ensure that we satisfy stakeholders, because we have to protect their interest. So if you understand that now the people that you are working for, which interest you are trying to protect in all you do, they are risk averse. Once you identify those risks, you need to do your proper work in terms of identifying also the likely mitigants. Then you escalate those risks and also the mitigants, suggest ways you feel that they can reduce the impact of those risks on the overall business process or the change initiative. Now, when you emphasize that, then you also let them know, just like the scenario you painted for, so you were trying to explain this app in UK that allows you to send funds to
Lemonade.
And you took your time to give us almost two scenarios that is kind of reflecting these questions that are asked here now. So you must be able to identify those risks and also suggest the mitigant, the ways we feel we can reduce the impact of the. That does not mean that the risk will not occur, but the benefit of not also going into the business initiative is something that they need to also consider, which means it's like 50-50. So, but if you're able to, like, emphasize more on the mitigant, how to reduce the impact, then we might be able to maximize the benefit over the risk. At the end of the day, what happens if the thing goes well or not, as a BA, because the people that are working from the onset, they are risk averse, you are most likely going to get your fingers pumped. That's my reference.
So what is your recommendation? You just explained what you are going to do in managing helping them to go handle the risk. But what would be your recommendation?
Okay, my recommendation
will it be for them to pursue, not to pursue, or to consider alternatives? You know that they are risk averse.
Yes, yes, I understand your point.
Yeah.
My recommendation will be for us to look at alternative.
If there
are alternative.
Okay. Thank you so much.
In the course of my work, I will recommend that.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right. I'll respond later. Thank you so much. Let's go to Tunji.
Yeah, my scenario is that the benefit outweighs the risk. Like, I will still carry out the risk analysis. Like, from the cybersecurity perspective, we have the risk acceptance. So I will still analyze the risk they can accept, and secondly, the risk that they can avoid, and the risk they can transfer. So I will let them know all these three risks. But my recommendation is that I will still recommend them to proceed with the initiative.
And they are risk averse, right?
Yeah.
You know the meaning of risk averse means that they are not willing to take any atom of risk.
Yes, because I've analyzed this and I've done the analysis.
Okay.
On the risk. So how to mitigate and the certain level of risk they can transfer to a third party.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
So you said you recommend them to pursue, right?
Yeah.
To go ahead with it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Oba.
Yeah, my own scenario is when the organization is risk neutral. However, in my analysis, I found out that the risks outweighs the benefits. What I would recommend is one, I like the various options in terms of how the benefits in terms of what are they looking at that the risks outweighs, maybe in terms of could there be payoff in terms of could we swap in terms of our profit making at the end of the day, or in terms of brand awareness, could we take that as an opportunity to strike out the level of risks? So what I'll do is I'll recommend, if I see that despite that the risks outweigh some benefits, it could be, let me assume that outweighs benefit in terms of finances, I could, but I see that in terms of brand awareness and in terms of business, in terms of being competitively playing that in terms of competitive advantage in the market, it could help, it could boost the company. I could use that to recommend that we should still pursue, since they are risk neutral. They can. That means if it's high or low, they can still take up the opportunity. So I would highlight the benefits that may not be financially beneficial to the organization, that I feel in the long run would benefit the organization. So I'll use that instance to recommend that we should go ahead with the recommendation, or with what we want to achieve at the end of the day.
All right. Thank you for that. Ikechukwu.
Yeah, yes, sir. So since the stakeholders are risk seeking, obviously I will carry out my risk assessment and analysis, identifying the potential risks, and also present it to the stakeholders about the potential benefits and the potential costs that might arise from making these risks. But since they are risk seeking, obviously they are more likely to take risks. I would advise them to consider other alternatives, see if they can seek other initiatives and diversify into something else. I think that's what I would do.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate our analysis and our angle to the scenario question. So, my 2 cents to this is this, whatever recommendation you are making as a BA, right? Whatever recommendation you're making as a BA, don't restrict or don't limit it to the risk tolerance of your stakeholder. The risk tolerance of your stakeholder is just an input to your risk assessment, right? But it shouldn't be what should define or what should decide on your recommendation. Your recommendation should be purely based on your findings. Whether it is to pursue or not to pursue or to decline, to look for alternative, whichever recommendation you are making, let it be purely based on your findings. So when you do your risk assessments, and you know, in doing your risk assessment, you also need to look at different options, right? You don't just put your eyes in one way, put all your eggs in one basket. When you do your findings, your risk assessments, and within that, you're able to clarify to everybody the benefits, the costs, the risks, the limitations, constraints, all of those things, possible unknowns that could occur in the future, everything. And then from your findings, you realize that the risks outweighs the benefits. The risks outweighs the benefits. Now, here's what you're going to do. You will give them 3 scenarios before you make your recommendation. The first scenario is that you explain to them in a situation whereby if they decide to pursue, this is what will come out of it, right? If they decide not to pursue, this is also what they stand to lose. So if they pursue, this is what they stand to lose, this is what they stand to gain. If they decide not to pursue, this is what they stand to lose, this is what they stand to gain. If they decide to consider other alternatives, this will be the impact, maybe to take longer time, or maybe there are really no much alternatives that could be yielding as much profit, or other alternatives might be as risky as that. By the time you give them those 3 scenarios, then you now make your own recommendation. Now, if the situation is such that the risk outweighs the benefits, I would advise you ask for more time for everyone to consider alternatives, or for the stakeholders not to pursue that initiative. But as I said, it is not in your hands to make a decision. You are what? Advising. You are recommending. This is your recommendation, right? If the risks and the benefits are equal, right? If they are equal, you can recommend for them to pursue or for them to consider other initiatives. And if the benefits outweigh the risks, you can recommend them straight up to pursue that initiative or look for other alternatives that probably could reduce the risk level further. Now, this is the way you should make a recommendation. Once you're able to do this, whether the person is risk averse or risk seeking or risk neutral, they will now make that decision by themselves, because instead of just telling them that they should not pursue, and they don't know the benefit of actually pursuing it, or the impact or the value they will get by pursuing it, or probably the benefit outweighs the risks, but you not tell them the impact that they will have if when the risk comes up rather, they might end up, oh, since you said the impact, the benefit outweighs the risks, and you are recommending us to pursue, well, our decisions that we'll pursue. But if you've not taken time to tell them what will happen when the risk actually occurs, and they are not aware of it, then you are depriving them of quality information or actual information for them to make the basis for their decision. So make sure you do a thorough risk assessment, right? Then the three scenarios of when the risks outweighing the benefits, if we should pursue, the three scenarios of if we should pursue, this is what will happen. If we should do this, this is what will happen. If we don't pursue, this is what will happen. If we look for alternatives, this is what will happen. Once you're able to paint those three scenarios for them, so you are softly or indirectly telling them that these are the three scenarios, whereby if we pursue, this will happen. If we don't pursue, this will happen. If we decide to look for alternative, this is what will happen. These are the three scenarios of what could possibly happen. But what I'm recommending as a BA is that let us do this. Let us do this, number one. Let us do A, or let's consider A or B. That's what I'm recommending. It is now their own responsibility to now decide if they want to pursue, or if they don't want to pursue, or they want to consider alternatives. Is that okay? I just brought the element of the risk tolerance of stakeholders into that scenario to see if it will skew your possible recommendation. But in every scenario, always itemize the three situations, then make your recommendation on which you, from your expert knowledge as a BA, think will be the best. You guys have any questions before we finish up with defining change strategy?
When making that recommendation, in writing it, is it important to put suggest, not so that I won't be held as a BA responsible?
No, you don't say you suggest. Suggest is not the domain word, it's not the technical word. There is recommend, or I would advise. So that you recommend does not mean that you are the one making a decision for them. Do you understand?
So that means that as a BA, I won't be held liable for whatever decision they make because I made the recommendation.
They'll come and sue you. They'll come and impersonate you. Now you go to jail. Well, the fact is this, if you are a BA, right, and the truth about it is this, I always like telling my students the truth. The truth about it is this, you can't just get a job today, and you can't get a job today as a BA. Just let's say you're a new BA, right, or you're a junior BA, and they want you to do things like strategy analysis for them, for the company. No, they wouldn't want to. They wouldn't want to bank on that. Do you understand? Is it that they want someone who is a senior BA or someone who is up there in management that understands strategy? That's what most companies do. Another thing that most companies do is to contract it off to consulting firms. That's why I see all these big companies. Is it that EY or PwC or McKinsey or BCG that helps them in their consulting and comes up with strategy for them? It's because they know that those ones have proven track records. And they are, what is the word now? It's like you can bank on their recommendation. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So that is it. And when a BA, in McKinsey or PwC or EY, the people that used to do this strategy analysis for clients in McKinsey or whatever is business analysts like you and I, which they now call them consultants. It's business analysts like you and I. So if you're a BA in a strategy company like EY. EY don't do tactical projects. They do strategic initiatives. Do you understand? So if you are in McKinsey or BCG, right, it's more of strategic projects you'll be doing, things like business cases, strategy analysis, business modeling for companies, top tier companies. And by the time you finish from there, you come to maybe, you now come to a company, probably you finish in McKinsey. You've worked in McKinsey for about 8 to 10 years. And you come to somewhere like Lloyd's Bank, they will make you head of strategy. But you are a BA there. You now come there and now become head of strategy. You be the one killing their strategy for them, dishing it out like hot asun.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, you're welcome. So don't be scared, right? You're only making recommendations. But all of these things comes with experience. And as I said, you don't work alone as a BA. You collaborate with stakeholders. Okay? All right, that takes us to the last segment of today's class, or section of today's class, which is defining the change strategy. By the time you've been able to gather a body of knowledge on what currently exists, and you've defined how the future should look like, at this point, you have sufficient information on how the change should be implemented, or how the change should go, right? On how the transition should go. When defining a change strategy, you need to implement the list of processes or things that need to be done for it to arrive in the future. Some of the things we consider is that we look at the scope of the solution to the future, right? We also look at what we call gap analysis. In gap analysis, we're basically trying to consider or compare the difference between the current and the future states. So let's say in the current state, this is how our organizational structure is, right? In the future state, this is how our organizational structure would look like. What is the difference between the current organizational structure and the future organizational structure? You highlight that, right? Maybe in the current state, we have 330 staff or employees. But in the future, for us to meet the future, we need to have up to 100. So what is the gap there? 70. You highlight that. So in your gap analysis section, you are listing out you're making a comparison between the current and the future. What is the difference between the current and the future? What gap exists between the current and the future states? And then you look at the readiness of that organization to make that change at the moment. So we call it assessing readiness, organizational readiness assessments. With the example I was given about my former place where I worked in the past, where we were doing our strategy work in 2019. We finished the work in early 2020, but the company was not ready at that moment to make that change. The change was implemented, or the future state rather, was achieved in late 2021. So their readiness for change at that moment was 0. But they wanted us to do this for them to help them define how the future of business for them, or future of their business will look like. And today, they are now a fully product-based organization. You also look at a high-level plan, which is your change strategy, a high-level plan of various things that needs to be done, places that changes need to be made, places that you need to make changes, key activities and events that need to occur at every instance of the transition. And then lastly, you look at how should they transit? Should it be a straight up transition whereby we are going to recruit, since we need 70 staff, we recruit all the 70 staff this month? Or should it be a release form of transition whereby if we decide I want to make this change, want to arrive at the future in 3 months, then every month we take some leap of faith towards the future every month. So the release, what phase, at what phase of the duration of the change should we achieve a milestone, right? So that is it about strategy analysis. I don't know if you have any question. Do we have any question? All right. So that brings us to the end of the class today. I know there was no assignments given in the last class.